So ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis, and it is the effort or the practice of trying to condition either an increase in what's deemed pro-social behavior and a decrease in negative behaviors in yourself or others. It studies elements of the behavior with a major component of that being a functional behavioral assessment or an FBA, which studies everything from duration to action, consequence, antecedents, and function. Function plays a huge role in how you approach a behavior, because if it's a behavior that's attention seeking versus a behavior that is avoidant, you would condition someone differently. In Mark Perez's video, he talks about measuring the behavior and that it needs to be something that is measurable and consistently measurable over time. And that's one of the elements that I found the hardest when looking for a few reasons, but when looking at my own students' behavior, I find it hard to operationalize or their behavior because some of it, in my opinion, could be like greatly cultural. Another bit of it is that is this really, do I just find this disrespectful or is it actually disrespectful? Intent is a huge role, and all of these things are necessarily taken into account via applied behavior analysis. And so in the article by Skibba and Friends and Company, they mentioned the effect of race on discipline, which ABA and FBAs and all of this sort of behavior grid, anything that deals with behavior in the American school system, I feel like is subject to a lens of prejudice and racism. And ABA is no exception to that. And so that is something to answer because I'm answering the odd questions. I don't know if I mentioned that. To answer question number 3, that doesn't necessarily jive well with me because I see some of my students' behavior or existence being sort of devalued or talked down to with everything from just their presence and how they present themselves to their voice that they use to like their volume. And I've had to deal with my own sort of policing behavior on that, which isn't always like the most popular choice in school. But there are certain expectations of students in school that I feel like don't represent who my students are. And I know that on the other side of 3rd grade, because you can't be suspended before 3rd grade, people are waiting to suspend them. And I see it like as a Black woman who works in the school with a lot of white people, a lot of Hispanic people, a lot of people who just don't understand culture. There are some elements of the culture of my students that I also don't get, even though we share the same race. But by and large, I understand their communication style, even though it's not necessarily my own, but I understand it better and react in a better way than some of my coworkers. And so I hear them say things like, well, it's okay because next year we can suspend her for saying that. Or next year we're just going to write her up for these sorts of things. And so it leads to like an over policing culture and over policing of student behavior. And then you have these students whose behaviors are being operationalized under the veil of like whiteness and who determines this acceptable behavior. that you want. These are all issues that have been brought up numerous times. And so I'm not saying anything new, but that is my problem with it. I am super interested in behavior, and thought about getting my ABA certificate or um, from like Texas A&M. And so, but I really sort of have to deal with thinking about the cases when it's not a function or a part of autism, and where it could just be an element of cultural misunderstanding and how to approach that. So moving on to question 5. Um, I like the idea of paying attention to my students and paying attention to their behavior. So while I don't think I can functionally or formally do an FBA as a teacher in the classroom, um, I like the idea of tracking time and duration. And is it when I hand out the due now, is that the day that Evelyn just erupts? Is that the time that she erupts? And what does she get by that? Um, because I do have students, one in particular that I'm thinking of, that I think use their behavior as a way to get out of schoolwork or a room that they don't want to be in. So my co-teacher is white and I am black, and I have a student that displays prejudicial behavior. I think I talked about her in my quiz portion of this module. And so every day, every morning, she does something to get kicked out of class, um, knowing that they'll send her back to me in the afternoon because she doesn't have a problem with me. And so she says some things that are like really problematic from the standpoint of like hearing it from an 8-year-old, and knowing that she's just parenting her environment, but also there's no problem solving around it. On any team about what to do to keep her in class, and so she's missing classwork. Uh, and the function of her behavior is obvious, but there is nothing to incentivize better behavior. And so maybe that's something I could do, sort of talking through it now. I'm thinking. Um, but from this module, I feel like I got a better understanding of what ABA is and what it looks like, and the pieces of it. I don't think, and maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to understand, but I don't feel like I could go in and just use these data collection forms and use them with fidelity and be great at it. Nor do I'm not going to say nor do. I am interested to explore what it looks like in my classroom to pay attention to behavior and not just the outward expressions of behavior, the loud kids, the kids that throw things, but also those that are quiet, because there's a lot to be said for silence too. And so I don't think every child in my classroom needs an FBA. That's not the purpose of it. Uh, but thinking about the kids that have difficulties in some areas, um, either caused by like a medical condition or some sort of trauma, this is a very interesting area to explore because it doesn't tell you what to do. Sorry, it doesn't tell you what to do uh, with the trauma that they've experienced or the culture that they bring. Uh, and so it's just really interesting because it came away from being something that was really high on my list. Is like, I think this is just the solution to everything and the way to figure out so many things. To, is it kind of part of the problem? Could it be part of the problem? Because we have a discipline problem in public schools. So that's where I stand at the end of this module. Um, Thank you. for your time and your attention. I'm sorry, I'm really congested. My allergies are kicking my rear. So if there's anything you don't understand, please just let me know and I will be happy to clarify.